Conor McGregor is not walking back into a normal fight on July 11th in Las Vegas. He is walking into a lie detector with gloves on. McGregor versus Holloway 2 is not a comeback story yet. It is a trial. And the strange part is Max Holloway is not only the opponent, he is the witness. He is the receipt. He is the guy standing across the cage asking a very rude question. Is Conor McGregor still Conor McGregor when the noise stops and the round starts? That is the real fight. Not just left hand versus volume, not just Ireland versus Hawaii, not just two famous names on the International Fight Week poster. This is the memory of McGregor fighting the reality of 2026. The confirmed setup is simple. UFC 3029 is listed for July 11th, 2026 at T-Mobile Arena in Las Vegas. The main event is Conor McGregor against Max Holloway. And if you have watched this sport for more than 6 minutes, you already know the sentence, Conor's back comes with a giant asterisk carrying a smaller asterisk. Because the last time McGregor fought in the UFC was July 2021. That fight with Dustin Poirier ended after McGregor broke his leg. Since then, the sport kept moving. Champions changed. Weight classes changed. The audience changed. Even the internet changed, which is rude because it was already unbearable. McGregor did not just leave the cage for a little while. He left long enough for nostalgia to become part of the matchmaking. That is why Holloway matters. This is not some random warm body placed in front of a superstar return. This is Max Holloway. This is a former champion. This is one of the most reliable pressure and volume strikers the UFC has ever had. This is not the welcome back cupcake. This is the invoice. And the invoice has history. McGregor and Holloway first fought in 2013. Back then, it looked like a cool prospect fight. In hindsight, it looks like someone accidentally opened the first chapter of two completely different legends. McGregor won that first fight by decision. He was still climbing. Holloway was still becoming Holloway. Neither man was the final version yet. It was like watching two trailers for movies that would later take over the whole theater. Then the path split. McGregor became the biggest star in MMA 2 divisions. Title belts, knockouts, press conferences that felt like someone gave a microphone to a thunderstorm. He turned fights into global events. Holloway became something different. Less fireworks outside the cage, more proof inside it. Rounds, pace, volume, durability. The kind of fighter who makes opponents feel like they are trapped in a printer that only prints punches. That is what makes this rematch dangerous. It is not only a rematch. It is a time machine with a bad attitude. The first fight asks, who were they? The second fight asks, what is left? For McGregor, the question is brutal. Can the timing still be there? Can the distance still be there? Can the left hand still change a room? Can the body still obey the brain at the speed elite fighting demands? Because fighting is not just courage, it is rhythm, it is reactions, it is feeling danger. Half a second before the audience sees it. And 5 years away from the UFC is not a vacation. It is rust with a camera crew. The old aura is powerful, but aura does not check leg kicks for you. Aura does not win scrambles. Aura does not manage lungs in round 4. Aura does not make a high-volume striker politely stop throwing. And that is where Holloway becomes the perfect problem. If McGregor returns against someone obscure, people can explain the result away. If he returns against someone too young, people can say the matchmaking was cruel. If he returns against someone washed, people can call it theater. But Holloway sits in that uncomfortable middle, famous enough to matter, skilled enough to expose him, familiar enough to make the story huge. This is why the fight feels less like a comeback and more like cross-examination. Holloway does not need to become a different fighter to ask hard questions. He asks them by being himself. Can you keep up? Can you stay calm? Can you handle pace after the first explosion? Can your fame breathe when the combination starts stacking? That last question is the mean one because McGregor's greatest weapon was never only the left hand, it was the atmosphere. He made opponents fight the event before they fought him. He made the walkout feel like a final exam. He made normal moments feel enormous. But atmosphere fades if the other guy refuses to worship it. And Holloway has never seemed like a man who gets hypnotized easily. So what does McGregor need? He needs the opening minutes to be real. He needs sharp counters. He needs discipline. He needs the fight to feel like a fight, not a reunion special. He needs to remind everyone that the old danger was not a marketing slogan. There's a version of this fight where that happens. McGregor comes out measured. The stance looks familiar. The left hand is fast enough. Holloway walks into something early. The arena remembers the old script. Suddenly, every fan who said, "I just want to see how he looks," becomes a historian with goosebumps. That is the comeback fantasy. And it is not impossible. But there's another version. The first round is loud, but not clean. Holloway absorbs the moments. The pace rises. The clock starts asking questions. McGregor has to fight not only Holloway, but every minute he spent outside this kind of fire. That is the nightmare version, not a sudden collapse. Something worse for a legend, a slow audit, and honestly, that is why people will watch. Not only because they love McGregor, not only because they love Holloway, they will watch because nobody knows which version of reality is still available. Is McGregor a dormant volcano, or is he a museum exhibit with a pay-per-view price? That sounds harsh, but that is the deal he made with fame. When you become that big, every return becomes a referendum. Every exchange becomes evidence. Every breath becomes content. And Holloway is not arriving as a side character in somebody else's comeback montage. That is the part that makes this fight feel honest. Holloway has his own story, his own pride, his own reason to erase the first result. For him, this is not nostalgia. This is a chance to walk into the biggest McGregor spotlight and say, actually, this part of the story belongs to me now. That is dangerous for Conor because the fight is being sold with McGregor gravity, but it can end with Holloway ownership. If Holloway wins, the headline is not only that McGregor lost, the headline is that the past finally failed the present. If McGregor wins, everything changes immediately. The whole machine wakes up, the contract talk gets louder. Future fights become possible again. Every fantasy matchup gets pulled out of the drawer and dusted off like it pays rent. That is why the stakes are bigger than one result. A McGregor win is oxygen for the entire comeback industry. A Holloway win is a cold shower. And honestly, MMA probably needs both. It needs the magic of impossible returns, but it also needs reality to occasionally walk into the room and turn the lights on. That is what July 11th is. It is not just a date, it is a receipt. McGregor has sold the world the idea that he is different. For a long time, the question now is whether different survives inactivity, injury, age, and an opponent who can turn a fight into a treadmill with bad intentions. And that is why this matchup is so much better than a soft comeback. A soft comeback tells us nothing. This tells us almost too much. It tells us whether the left hand is still a threat. It tells us whether the legs still trust the moment. It tells us whether the cardio can survive a man who throws volume like he is paid by the receipt. It tells us whether fame can still tilt a real fight. Most importantly, it tells us whether McGregor's myth is still active or whether it has become something fans carry for him. Because myths do not retire cleanly. They get tested, they get doubted, they get one more arena, and then somebody across the cage either confirms them or starts taking them apart, piece by piece. That is the beauty of this fight. It is simple enough for casual fans and deep enough for people who have argued about southpaw counters in comment sections at 3 in the morning. McGregor can still shock everyone. Holloway can still ruin the movie. The UFC gets the biggest spotlight it can ask for, and the rest of us get the rare fight where the question is bigger than the technique. Who is Conor McGregor now? Not in interviews, not in training clips, not in expensive suits, not in the memory of 2016. Now, under the lights against Max Holloway, when the cage door closes and the old aura gets cross-examined, McGregor might still have one more impossible night in him. Holloway might be the man who proves the clock finally won. So tell me this, are we watching a comeback or are we watching the old aura get cross-examined?